Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, D. Clark. Garrison Hurst.
This is the 49er Faithful UK show, and that was week 15. And it was also a steaming pile of Thursday night football. You all know what happened, so we're just going to get this podcast done. I'm Gareth Ellis, and hopefully not abandoning me in the third quarter is Lee Gowland.
Now then, mate. Now then. That was a long night, a long game.
Yeah. We should say huge apologies from Nadji and Paul. It's Friday night. It's mid-December. It's tough to get us all together, and we didn't want to wait till Monday to record. We needed to get this game flushed, but I think you've got some additional information on that, Lee.
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, the way things are, we don't like negativity in the group, so we've had to basically kick Nadji from the group because there's dirty points and then there's the dirtiest of points, and the dirtiest of points is to predict a Rams win at Levi Stadium, and that was just too much for the admin team to take. So unfortunately, Nadji will be no more. Good luck in whatever you could do next, Nadji. I assume you're going to be a Chargers fan. Crack on, buddy.
Ooh. Well, you know, maybe he's got an affinity for Los Angeles teams based now. He might flop between the two. Yeah.
He might.
I was going to say who's going to get it worse today, Nadji or Devondre. So
it's going to be close.
It's going to be close. Full disclosure, I had a busy start this morning. I couldn't stay up and watch the game. I happened to wake up at some point about 5 and immediately checked my phone and it just went and turned over, went back to sleep. So I don't really have any talking points. All I've seen is the kind of fallout. I've watched the highlights, such as they are, and couldn't really glean much from that. So it's going to be led by you, Lee, I think, in terms of the talking points.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I hadn't actually gone to bed by the time you got up. So obviously there was news broke not long after the end of the game, which made me want to stay up and listen to all of the interviews from the coaches and the players. And we will get onto that. Hopefully, I'm going to try and keep the negativity down as much as possible, but you wouldn't think that when you listen to my first two talking points.
It's difficult not to. Yeah, we've got to get it flushed. We can't ignore the show that was.
Yeah, exactly. So my first talking point is Debo. Oh no. Second point. That man has a family, but he doesn't have a father. Let's move on.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Third point is pay him the money. Pay that man the money. I saw one half of football that proves to me we need to pay that man the money and make sure he comes back next year. And I think everybody knows who I'm talking about. But once we get to that point, that's when I'll reveal that person's name. But I think everybody knows who I'm talking about.
I think so. And I think there's one place to start because it'll warm everybody up nicely. And I think that is the family man. Without married parents, I think was what you were implying. I think we should talk about this early and then never mention that individual's name again on this show.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because, I mean, I think we feel exactly the same way as what the coaching staff felt, what the players felt when it broke. Me being the glass half full kind of person, thought, there must have been a reason. There must have been. He mustn't have been.
Oh, you?
Well, I like to think so. He must have been under the weather or something like that. There must have been some extraordinary reason for what happened to have happened. But as it turns out, there wasn't. He just didn't want to play because he was upset that he lost his starting place to Drake Greenlaw. And Devondre Campbell, he's been, we all think he's been garbage pretty much all the season. He's had 2, a maximum of 3 games where you thought, that was a decent game by Campbell. Other than that, we've even defended him. I mean, we have asked for him to be sacked, but we have also defended him and said, look, let's see how he grows into the season. The coaching staff have defended him. Shanahan's defended him. Sorensen's defended him. And he goes and does this. He refuses to come on when Dre Greenlaw has to come on because he was on a snap count. They were trying to limit the amount of snaps he played. You could see him on the sideline. He was using one of the massage guns on the back of his ankle. He was obviously in some discomfort. So we ended up having DFF go in. DFF was carrying an injury. It was clear to see that he was carrying an injury. He shouldn't have been in there. That should have been Campbell that was in there. And obviously, I think D. Winters got a bit of a knock during the game as well. So we were pretty beaten up at linebacker at the point in time when he was asked to go in. And to just turn around and say, you know what? No, don't want to play football. It's an absolute disgrace. I think both George Kittle and Chiveri Sword said it best. Chiveri Sword basically said, you just don't do that. It's a sucker move that. You just don't do it. And Kittle, he turned around and says, I wish somebody had told us that before he'd left the field. Because I know Kittle would have had words with them. And I mean, you mentioned it. In fact, I'll let you go with it. You talk about what you mentioned to me about the fact that there's other players who are going through a lot more than just losing the starting place. And I agree with that 100%.
Well, that's it. And I think I'd picked that up from comments on Facebook today, where I think the general level of disgust was 100% consistent across the group. And someone had just remarked, I said, look at what other players have been through off the field, like Mooney Ward, and they still want to get back on to do what they can for their team and to help their teammates out and help us somehow limp into the playoffs, which looks bleak. And these guys are coming back from that. They're coming back from injury, and we've got a guy who's perfectly fit, has played all those games, and clearly doesn't like a little bit of rain, or is a little bit upset that somebody 10 times better than him took his place. I did notice
a snowflake.
It is, and it seemed to me, I don't know whether that's something that just came to him during the game, or whether he said, well, I'm going to suit up for this because then I'll get my paycheck for the game, but I ain't playing. And, you know, if he'd had that, I don't think there's anything that can make it worse, but deciding it mid-game or deciding it pre-game. Yeah, deciding pre-game, I'll suit up, but I ain't going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Knowing fine well he wasn't going to step on that field, because we could have called up Jalen Gray from the practice squad. We could have had him on the active roster, and he would have gone in, and he would have played better than Campbell anyway. In fact, that's it. I'm not going to call him Campbell. He could have played better than the Kent anyway. Definitely.
The other
definitely
linebacker Kent.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was escorted from the field, and I hope when he went into the locker room, he cleared out his locker room, and he doesn't grace Levi Stadium ever again. I've had a look at some of the numbers, and he's only on a 1-year deal. He's got a void year in his contract, so we're already going to carry a dead cap hit of 2.68 million next season, regardless of whether or not we signed him to an extension. And this season, we only saved 320,000.
Yeah, I think
no, it's definitely
likely.
not. It's definitely not. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if John Lynch had actually ordered him a taxi when he saw him walking off the field. So that's the Kent is gone, and I think that's about all we can say about him.
I think what highlighted was Shanahan's response to it, where basically people said you're going to cut him, and even then he's got enough respect to say, well, we'll sort something out, rather than make that knee-jerk reaction of we're going to cut him, because it's that, maybe something tragic happened in his family and literally someone got word to him seconds before he was due to go on. I like that about Shanahan, that he doesn't hang the players out to dry. Yeah, even in that situation, even that, which is pretty much every other coach in the league would have stripped that guy at the podium and out. But Shanahan bats the question aside and says, "No, we'll deal with that in house. We'll sort something out." Which he's basically saying yes, but he's almost protecting the player. But he's protecting the organisation. So, fair play to him for that, because he must have been livid. That game.
Well, you could see it in his face.
You're struggling with the weather, and suddenly you get a turnaround. It's bad enough when players are sort of like, I'm injured. For a player to just go, well, I don't fancy it, boss. Yeah. Get him out.
And he did turn around and said it's the first time it's ever happened to him, and he thinks it's the first time. Well, it's not the first time it's happened in the NFL, because Antonio Brown, he did a similar thing. And funny that, because I've been watching a lot of different analysts who've been basically commenting, giving their side to this, and pretty much everybody disagrees with what he did. The person that came closest to saying he understood was Richard Sherman, but he also turned around and said, "You do not do that to your teammates.
No,
You
God, no.
never, ever do that to your teammates." And what he's done is unforgivable. And he also mentioned the Antonio Brown whole situation because he was on the books when that happened as well.
Of course.
So
yeah,
he
the,
kind of
Bucks.
said, look, I can understand what was probably going through his mind, but he went the wrong way about doing what he did, and you just don't do it. So I'm glad everybody's pretty much on the side of the 49ers coaching staff and the team itself, the organisation.
Was he implying that basically he's on a 1-year deal? The weather's horrible. It's late in the game. He knows he's done at the 49ers because Greenlaw's back. But even though Greenlaw's out of contract, is he basically saying he was like, I don't want to get injured this late in the season for a dead season?
Potentially, that's what might have been going through his head.
Yeah, but then you'd have no one suiting up in weeks 15 onwards, would you? Across the league.
Exactly.
That's pathetic. Anyway, I think that is enough about he shall not be mentioned.
Done and dusted.
Again. Other than on the next show,
Voldemort.
where I think Nadji and Paul should still get the opportunity to give him both barrels. So
yeah, I think that's fair enough.
That is fair enough. Yeah. Debo, no. Oh no.
Debo, oh no. Yeah. So I mean, lead up to the game wasn't great. Debo bitching and moaning about not getting the ball enough. And that's okay if you can back it up, like what Kittle did. Look, I'm wide open all the time. Don't know why I'm not getting the ball. He didn't really call anybody out, whereas Debo was just like, well, you're not throwing the ball to us. You're not targeting us. So that's why my stats aren't as good as last year. And then he gets the opportunity, and he dropped what could have been the game-winning touchdown because I
have seen that, and
it's of Ronnie Bell proportions.
I was going to exactly say that it's of Ronnie Bell-esque.
Yeah, it's as though Ronnie Bell had pulled on a Debo Samuel suit and ran out there in disguise. It was that bad. I mean, it wasn't just that either. I mean, the whole game, he didn't have any impact whatsoever on the game.
He hasn't this season, and it has been diminishing. I think even last season. The
biggest impact he had was on the kick return on our final drive when we had 18 seconds left. So you got a 35-yard return, and then that was we had 15 yards added for the penalty. That was his biggest return on the game, or his biggest impact on the game.
It's been his biggest contribution these last few weeks.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion about we should get rid of Debo. The problem with that is because his contract's so high, it's not worth getting rid of him next season. We save $5 million. In the grand scheme of things, $5 million, but we also have a huge dead cap hit. And we know on his day, when he does play well, he's unstoppable. So is it worth risking that $5 million? Is it worth risking it for $5 million? Whereas 2026, we can drop him for next to nothing after June the 1st. So that's what I think will happen. One or two things will happen. He'll either play out next season as a 49er, and then we'll cut him post June the 1st, 2026, or we'll trade him. And to me, I'd rather trade him. If we can get some draft picks, and I don't care what the draft picks are.
Yeah.
It
Swapping
could be
6th and
4th
7th.
and 5th, anything.
If
we can get that off the books.
It's a salary dump trade to get rid of him. I think everyone knows that. I think there are teams around the league who will find Debo's skills attractive. I think there are going to be suitors, but they're also going to realise that we've got no leverage. I don't think he wants to be in San Francisco anymore.
No, I don't think he does.
I think he's perhaps going the wrong way about looking for the next contract at the next team, but that he doesn't seem to be tied in this season. He doesn't seem to have that fire in him like he did a couple of seasons ago, where obviously he had a down season and he took ownership of that in the off season, and he came back lighter and hungry. This season, he just looks like he wants to collect his check and go home.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And to be honest, ever since 2022, when there was the whole Twittergate storm during the draft, when me and Nadji were over in the draft, because that's all anybody wanted to talk to us about. Well, that and the fact they wanted to have the photo tape with Nadji because they thought he was Aaron Rodgers. But other than that, it was, what do you think's happening with Debo? Are you gonna trade him? And both me and Nadji were saying all the time, we're not trading him anywhere. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
But we did have an iron in the fire just in case it did happen, so that we could sneak into the first round of the draft. But it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Debo let himself down, let the team down. He should have been concentrating more, and I just think it was a poor move on his behalf, because he's not a rookie. He's an experienced player. He knows he has to catch that ball before making off for the end zone.
Mm.
And he did. He let himself down, which is a shame, because, yeah, yesterday, had we won, we'd have went up to a massive 11% chance of making the playoffs, and we're currently at 0.1%. So it's not quite dead.
I mean,
not quite dead.
Do you think with Debo as well, he's upset that he's clearly not the number one anymore? Perhaps with Ayuk getting paid, and Ayuk getting paid, 50% more again than Debo does, just because of the way the salary cap goes up and the player contracts balloon. Do you think he enjoyed being the main man? Ayuk had a good season, Ayuk got paid, and suddenly Debo's not anymore. He's a wide receiver.
Yeah,
he is going to be a diva.
Yeah, possibly, because he does seem to be very money oriented, just like BA is as well. Whereas the likes of Kittle and Warner took restructures to the contracts to build a better team. They weren't threatening to hold out. So yeah, I think he can be a bit like that. I think he's a little bit deluded if he ever thought he was wide receiver one. Because to me, he's never been a wide receiver one. He's been more of a gadget player. Obviously, the wide back role, I think that's suited him down to the ground until everybody got used to that. So yeah. I think he's not as useful to us now as what he previously was. And I know this goes completely against what I said early on in the season, saying that we can't afford to lose Debo. Well, the season's changed my mind on a few players, Debo being one of them. Yeah. J.R. Brown, I think, has had a really poor season towards the back end of the season, and I've had my eyes opened on him as well, because I thought he was a nailed-on starter for next season, and I'm not too sure now based off the last few weeks.
Yeah, he has struggled, but it's difficult to see whether that's just there's hope for him, because that's his second year. A lot of players have that second year dip. It's potentially a new system. Maybe he's being asked to do something differently. He doesn't have experience, or he's the experienced guy next to Mustafa. I think he's had a poor season, and I think he's probably, if we draft a safety, which he probably will, he'll be fighting for a roster spot. But I think there's some hope for him because he's a second-year player. I think Debo's, words, I think his demeanour just don't strike me as a team captain, and it does strike me that he's probably top of the list of cap casualties, deadwood pruning, however we might want to put it. We have got a long off season. I think we will try and not look to the future too much, because we're going to have months and months to cover that. But yeah, I can't disagree with anything on Debo. I don't know what he's going to do in the next few games. Let's see. He has a chance to win his place back. So
I've got to say that is the worst possible segue into my third point that can ever be, because we just about to talk about the future.
Yeah. Okay. No.
Money.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I know
about cutting players, about the off-season work. Okay, pay him. Who? I mean, clearly you're talking about
Drake Greenlaw. He plays half and a little bit of football, and he was outstanding. What a difference he made! Towards the end of the first half, he was leading the defense with 8 tackles, and he just stepped up there. And you could see he made such an impact on the defense, on the whole of the defense, not just the linebacking core, that he does seem as though he's almost the engine room. We always think it's Fred that's the engine room. I think Fred's more the leader. I think Dre is the engine that makes the defense work. Fred is basically steering that mammoth engine, and Dre is the engine. And I think we should pay him. And if it means getting rid of Debo to pay him, get rid of Debo. I'd quite happily see us get rid of Debo and pay him. Obviously, we've got some other people that we need to pay or re-sign. I think some of those will be a casualty of how much we need Dre Greenlaw.
Yeah. Not seen it, but I'm not surprised at that at all. We've been waiting for him to come back. We've clearly missed him. There was clearly a massive weak spot, a walking weak spot in our linebacking core, which has hopefully been fixed. I'm hoping he can get a few games this season and kind of get back into playing the game. I hope it just doesn't put him perhaps too much in the shop window. Because it is going to be a tall order to keep him. It's going to be how much I think he wants to stay and be part of this team, because there are 31 teams in the league where he would be their top linebacker.
So, I mean,
absolutely,
like I said,
that's true.
For me, I saw enough in that first half of football very early this morning to convince me that we need to re-sign him. If I was Shanahan, I would be shutting him down for the rest of the season so nobody else can see any more tape on him, so they can't really judge how well he has returned from the injury.
People know, I think.
Yeah,
it's how well he's recovered from the injury.
The chance as well, yeah. They'll be willing to take a chance. But yeah, I think we definitely need to pay him because he makes such a huge difference. And if I can see a Greenlaw, Warner, Winter linebacking core next season, I think that's going to be excellent for us. It's a solid linebacking core. And then we just need to draft in one or two more linebackers. I think Jalen Graham, I think he's going to come good.
Yeah.
I think DFF, I know he had an injury last night, but I think DFF is probably at the end of his time with the 49ers.
It's been about 5 years. He's hung around as a sort of special teams, hasn't he? So fair play. Yeah. He's put his shift in. But yeah, I think probably younger and cheaper is going to take his place.
Yeah.
Interesting. When you said pay him, I thought the conversation was about Purdy.
Oh, really?
Because that's obviously been a discussion that he had a poor game in the rain.
He did.
He's had statistically some quite poor games this season. And I think questions have been asked about exactly how much he might be worth paying and how much he's worth committing to when there are some deficiencies in his game, potentially that other quarterbacks don't have, particularly I think about size, which there's nothing you can do to fix that particular one. Where do you stand on the paying Purdy? Have you changed now we're getting to the back end of a disappointing season?
No, I think we should definitely pay Purdy, but I've never ever bandied about a figure. I've never ever thought he should be paid top dollar because he's not the best quarterback in the league. If you look at what the biggest contract is, it's Dak's at the moment, which is $62 million, and then it immediately drops to 55 for I think the next 3 or 4. I think it's the next 3 quarterbacks.
One of them is Trevor Lawrence, who is quite mediocre.
Overrated. And then you go down all the way down to 15th, and I think 15th is about 45 million. So I think it's going to be somewhere between 45 and 55. I don't think it should be north of 55. I don't think Brock will want it to be north of 55 because that'll be putting added pressure on himself. I think there'll be. We're assuming Brock is this like team friendly player. I hope he is, because he does give that kind of impression that he will bend over backwards to help the team out. He wants to be successful. He wants to be successful on the field rather than in the bank. So I think he'd probably accept anywhere between 45 and 55 because that's a huge jump to what he's currently on. Yes, last night or early this morning. Sorry, I keep on forgetting it was early this morning.
We know what you mean.
Yeah, he did. He had a poor game. The ball he threw for the interception, it was a mistake, and he admitted that. He said, "Look, I made the mistake. I didn't see the end of his route of how much separation he had. But even then, there was 3 defenders right next to JJ, so he shouldn't have thrown that ball. And I think Debo was open. Debo was open on a crossing route, and I think Pearsall was open in the flat, and he could have went to either one of those. And it was only 2nd and 11 as well. We didn't need a touchdown throw at that point, and we didn't need 10 yards at that point. We could have just dunked it off to Debo on the crossing route over the middle. 5 yards would have done us at that point. But it comes down to experience. Yeah. It comes down to experience, and he'll get that. It's his 2nd full season as a starter. He will get that. That's the type of thing that players learn. They get better at cutting down on the mistakes. And that's all that was. It was a mistake. Admittedly, I actually thought he threw the ball better in the rain than what I was expecting, because I was expecting 0 deep balls. And there was a few of them thrown. And I thought he did well to actually get the ball down the field because of how much it was raining. So it doesn't quite answer the question about his hands being small and struggling in the rain. But like I said, he did do a lot better than I was expecting. And to be honest, we were left with no choice because of the way the Rams had set up. Because it was raining so much, they absolutely stacked the ball to force us to throw the ball. Stacked the box to force us to throw the ball. Because unfortunately, Garendo went back to being the ball is handed off to Garendo, and he stopped at the line of scrimmage for quite a bit of the game. So we were kind of forced into a situation where we were bound to see mistakes come from Brock, because he was under a lot of pressure to make plays because of the type of defense that we were facing.
Yeah, and it's a positive that he's prepared to take those chances. I think it's the wrong decision, and you learn from it. But he's never shied away in some of the time where we knew sometimes when it got tough, Jimmy was immediately looking for the checkdowns and I'll give the ball to someone else. I've completed my part, so my bit's done. I'll let somebody else do it. Whereas I think he's a lot more prepared to take the risk and prepared to then put his hands up and say, yeah, that was a poor pass. That's on me. I've cost us the game. And that's what I want. We can make our own minds up, but your quarterback coming out and deflecting it from Debo or Purcell or JJ or whoever, that's exactly what you want to see in terms of leadership from a quarterback. I think that the paying him is obviously going to be one of the big issues for the off-season. I hope it doesn't drag. One thing that tends to... It's one of the few things that annoys me about the financial side of the NFL is this idea that just the next person in line to get the contract, their contract has to be bigger just because the cap grows. So Trevor Lawrence got this massive contract when he's, I think, won one playoff game, maybe, and isn't actually that good. But it just seems to be, it's almost accepted, particularly for quarterbacks. So it will be interesting to see if his agent is saying, no, the convention is you're going to get paid 60 odd million. I hope he takes less, but for longer years, maybe aligned to Shanahan, because I do think if Shanahan completes his next contract, which is 4 years or something he's got left, 4 or 5 years, if we still haven't won a Super Bowl, I think that's maybe where Shanahan's position is going to be more of a talking point. And I'm not sure every head coach would want Purdy. And that's not against Purdy, but I think some other coaches would potentially look for different traits in their quarterback than Shanahan does. So I think that's maybe what I'm hoping for, that we can get somewhere with the right contract length and some high guarantees in exchange for maybe a lower cap figure. And obviously, if it's a longer contract, we can prorate that cash bonus, which he is long overdue. Since I think he's probably still in a room share, isn't he? Although he is married now, so hopefully not.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned this on a post earlier on today. I think it was only within the last couple of hours, to be honest. And I kind of made the point of, look, just remember back to Jimmy Garoppolo. He played 5 games, and then we made him the highest paid quarterback in the league. How long did that last? Within 3 months, he wasn't even in the top 5 of being the highest paid. And once that happened, people kind of started to forget about how much we paid him because there was all these other quarterbacks. And some of them at the time, we thought, well, how on earth are you getting paid more than what Jimmy is? And the same thing will happen. So even if we do go in and give him 55 million, which I think is probably a little bit much, for what he's done this season, maybe not last season, but this season, I think I would be comfortable with 51, 52 million. We've got to remember, in probably 12 months' time, he might not even be in the top 10 top paid quarterbacks, because the cap is exploding over the next couple of seasons. So you just need to remember that. And the thing that really gets me about the whole financial side it isn't the financial side. It's the fans who think they're armchair GMs and they can understand it. They see this figure, they've no idea how it's structured, and they just make something up in their mind saying, oh yeah, he's just completely handcuffed the team. We're not going to be able to strengthen areas that we need to strengthen because of what he's taken as a salary. So that's the thing that gets me most when you see fans starting to complain about players getting paid.
Yeah, it's not a complaint at all about being paid. It's always it's the cap. It's where else do we need to go? Because one thing that I think has to go with Brock getting paid is we need to find the best available centre and pay them the money. Because I think one of Brock's struggles this year has been people just coming straight at him up the middle.
Yeah.
And because he's not the tallest guy, that's always going to be a weakness. We absolutely, if you're going to pay Purdy, you absolutely have to protect him in that middle. And that's got to go hand in hand with Purdy's money.
I think we're going to have an even bigger immediate need on the offensive line come the end of the season, because I am not at all convinced that Trent is going to play for another season. I think he may be done now. I think we've seen the last he's ever going to play for us, which is sad, because if he retires, which he would do if he's not going to play again, if he retires, to see a talent like that not get a ring, I think that is comparable to the likes of Dan Marino, because he is possibly the best left tackle that's ever played the game. So it'll be sad if he leaves and he doesn't get that ring. I hope Shanahan can convince him to come back for a season, and then we can concentrate on centre, because I said it back in 2022 when I got interviewed by Jeff Reinbold, who's your draft crush in round one, even though you don't have a pick. And I went for Linderbaum, who is now the centre at the Ravens. And he's just unbelievable.
Well, there we go. We're going to have a reasonably high draft pick, aren't we? So
we are, and we could be in a position where we'd actually move up and take the top left tackle, which kind of makes us think, you know what? We can generally get a centre. You can get one of the top centres towards the back end of the first round, start of the second round. You could see the centres that came off the board this year. There's some very good ones. I mean, we took Pearsall, and Zach Frazier was still on the board, and he's turned out to be an excellent centre. And I think he went maybe late 30s, early 40s, something like that. So we could have gotten a centre there. I think they might look at the next draft, and I know we're getting off topic here, but I think they might look at the next draft a little bit similar to how they viewed the 2023 draft with Trey Lance. We're in a position where we're possibly not going to be this high again for maybe 4 or 5 years. If we can move up and take the top left tackle, let's do it this year and have them sit and learn behind Trent for a season. So that wouldn't surprise us at all.
No, that would be good. I think, we've got all off season to delve into this, but I think some very decisive and potentially aggressive off season moves are needed, both pruning and adding to this team. And it isn't a rebuild, I don't think, but I think there's some extensive modification required to rebalance where we've invested money and talent. Particularly, on the O-line. But I will stop banging on about that.
Yeah.
We've covered your talking points. I think we've covered what most people are talking about.
I've got a bit of a left field one. Yeah, I've got a bit of a left field one. I like this is going to sound strange, because this is going to sound like I'm starting off with a negative comment that quickly swings into a positive. Okay,
excellent.
So
keep them guessing.
I don't know how much you read before the game about the officiating crew.
Nothing.
Because there's some stats put in the group about all the flags on offense. And it kind of rang true. So it was true to form. There was flag after flag on offense for false starts, illegal motion, holding, and very little on defense. I wish we'd had this officiating crew in both of our previous Super Bowls, because if we did, we'd have won both of those Super Bowls. I thought the way they officiated the game, even though it was a bit stop-start on offense and it kind of took a little bit of the flow out of the game, I think it was a much better game for it, because I like defense. I like defensive football. Ronnie Lott is my favourite player all time. Fred Warner is my current favourite player. I like defense. I like seeing people getting hit. Yeah. I don't know if it's a northern thing. You turn out on a Friday or Saturday night and somebody's always getting hit. But that's the type of thing I like. I like hard-hitting defenses. I like the fact that last night the defensive ends were allowed to play. They stopped all the holding, and you could see that there was plenty of pressure getting in there. I know we didn't get any sacks, but you could see there was pressure. Stafford was getting flushed out quite a lot of the time, and I like that. So it's something, like I said, completely left field, but I think that officiating crew was actually quite good for the game. I think it made a much more entertaining game.
Yeah. And in some respects, I think that's good. You've got to give the defense a bit more of the benefit of the doubt, because it's action and reaction, isn't it? And the offense act and the defense reacts. And I think you should be able to get the action right, i.e. the false starts and the holds should be easier to avoid than we want players to be able to play defense and maybe have that little bit of a nudge and a little bit of a tug on the wide receivers. Otherwise, it does turn into that non-contact sport. And I think that's something that I like to see the players play, particularly on the defensive side.
So I'm glad you said that, because there was a lot of players where people were screaming for pass interference, and some of the analysts would turn around and say, well, that would normally be a pass interference. Well, that would normally be a pass interference because officiating crews are just too soft. There was contact, but it was minimal. I mean, it's like watching the Premier League, and one of the star strikers goes down in the box as though he's been shot by a sniper in row Z. That's the type of thing you see nowadays with pass interference. The receivers make a big deal of it, yet there's been minimal contact to actually stop them from getting the ball. And that was last night. I actually thought pretty much all of the calls, or all of the non-calls for pass interference, were good non-calls, because there was minimal contact. And like I said, I mean, I enjoyed that, because you saw a good defensive game, and yet the offenses, the score's going to say I'm a liar here, but the offenses were moving the ball around. Yeah,
I'll have to take your word for that. I think I'm
not sure about all the punts.
Yeah, I am.
At
not,
one
I'm
point, we
not
thought
sure.
we were going to make a record.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to muster myself to watch the game in 40. It sounds like a painful experience I just don't need.
So I didn't bother going back to rewatch it. Yeah. I just could not put myself through that again.
No, we don't need that. I think we've kind of done that enough, really.
I think we have, yeah.
Well, because I'm pretty sure we will cover some of this ground when Dodgy, when Paul's back and Dodgy rages on Discord. If he's allowed back on the show, she might be.
He'll have to talk nicely to us.
Yeah, clean up his points. We haven't talked about that. I think it's a bit of fun, isn't it? But I don't know if we're in the mood for a lot of fun. But Dodgy was the only one who got points.
So Dodgy not only was the only one that
nasty
got points,
little points.
So there was somebody else that got points from the Pod Faithfuls, but they only got points because they got a score that was very close to what the Rams' final score was. So it was Gary Parks, he got 2 points, but he didn't have dirty points. From what I gather, my understanding is Dodgy was the one and only person on an island by himself that went for the dirtiest of points you could possibly go for. Like I said, it's unforgivable. That's why we've just kicked him from the group, and he's going to have to beg to come back in. But it was the dirtiest. I don't know how much showering and washing he's going to have to do to get rid of the stench of these points, especially against the Rams.
They're going to hang around at least until next season, I think. Now it's going to be a long off season.
Definitely. So for the benefit of everybody that's listening on the podcast, so Dodgy has managed to leapfrog Paul, who is now in dead last on 58 points. Najee is 4th with 62. Gareth 3rd with 64. I'm 2nd with 68. And the Pod Faithfuls are 1st with 71. So it's still quite close. Between the 4 of us, it's down to 10 points. So at one point, I think there was 16 points between first and last. So it is getting close again. We've got 3 games left, and
yeah, wide open.
Because of that 0.1% of a chance of the playoffs, definitely in the next game against Miami, I think we'll have all of the starters that are fit, and they'll come out and they'll play the game to win the game.
I assume Sunday's games might eliminate that 0.1% chance.
Oh, possibly, yes. I mean, so we definitely can't win the division now. So it's a wild card. That gives us that 0.1% chance.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. That's enough of that. I think we're done, aren't we? 40 minutes.
Are done.
That's
definitely
enough.
Done.
Yeah.
I want to go and get a drink. It's Friday.
Yeah.
I want to get over this morning's game. The betrayal by Najee Kara.
Yeah, shocking. But thank you, Lee. It's been awful. But thank you,
Thank you
to everyone who has stuck with us through the season so far and continues to watch and listen to the show. There is still some season left, and it might take some time to get over this disappointment. But we will be with you the rest of the way, and hopefully try and squeeze a few smiles out of the arse end of this crappy season. So, barring some kind of divine intervention, there is no Niners football past week 18 this year. It's just another dip in the roller coaster of 49er life. But we will be back, and we will be back with a muddy funking vengeance. NFC West teams, enjoy this because it's only temporary. Stay faithful and go Niners.
Bye-bye, Najee Kara.
Ooh.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, D. Clark. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going 99.